Yo, what is up YouTube? And today we're going to be talking all about DPS shells. Now, DPS shells, there's so many different choices. I mean, there's a lot of choices for like every role, but today we're going to focus mostly on damage dealing shells and which ones you actually want to be using on certain characters and for certain areas of content. So basically, if you're in the early game, it's not going to really pertain to you too much, but if you guys are wondering what to use in the early game, the best DPS shells are going to be something like Budo Panda from this boss, and also Tamamo Doji. These are going to be like worse versions of the late game shells, but they're still very solid, you can use them. And also, once you hit Fabian, that's where you want to start farming Twilight Knight for your damage dealers, and Black Flag like for like pretty much everyone else. But those are like your two early game areas. The Apade is going to be for like very low levels, and then once you unlock Fabian at like level 20-ish, I think, you can start using Twilight Knight, which will be very, very good. Now, once you get into the late game, which is going to be like Nico Nana and onwards, Nico Nana and onwards will drop 3 very good damage dealing shells for the most part. You have White Fang, very, very good. You also have Revelation from Shadow Flame Hoyan, which is going to be a very solid choice, kind of like a very hot topic because it's used on more than just damage dealers, which we'll talk about. And we also have Count, which is going to be a very solid attack boost, which will also give you like this lifesteal effect on it, which is very powerful. Now I'm just going to open my inventory because it's a lot easier to see. And let's just talk about the 3 shells one by one. So first off, we have White Fang. So White Fang is going to be pretty much the first shell you're going to have maxed out that's red because it's from Nico Nana, and Nico Nana is like the first area of content you're going to really farm. And this shell is super solid, but you don't want to get baited by it. A lot of people just keep using this because it's literally the first shell they maxed. But I'm going to tell you now, it's only good in like one specific niche, and that's going to be for single target damage dealers. You're going to see that this shell effect only has like a single target damage effect, so it's only good on like bosses, and it also has a crit damage stacking effect. Now this means that it's only good in single target because the other, like the effect doesn't really affect your AoE at all. The crit damage does affect it a little bit, but this takes a long time to ramp up. So because of this, you want to bring it into single target fights, and especially long fights. In shorter fights, it's not that great because you're only like getting this extra damage, which is whatever, but the crit damage to ramp up really takes a long time. So you need to have this in like long fights over short fights, right? For example, if you're doing something like shells, right? You're gonna like one-shot a lot of these, especially on Hell, and even on Inferno, the fights don't take nearly as long. So because of that, you're not gonna really run it here. You're most likely gonna run it in Anasync Echoes, Ember Trek, and like Ethernet Rally. It's good in these 3 areas. It's also very good in Phantom Theater and also good in Union Boss. So not gonna be the best choices for farming, you know, fights that take shorter than honestly like 5 minutes. So for that reason, it's not going to be honestly the most used damage dealing shell, but it's still very good, especially when it's the only one you have. It's still solid. If you have nothing else to use, I would still use it. A character such as Diting, that's pure single target, really loves this shell, especially if you bring him into harder content. A very common strategy, especially in the harder Ember Check stages, is to run literally just Diting with like 4 supports. So you're going to see, it doesn't have to be Diting. A lot of people run other stuff, but people just run, I guess this is like a harder stage that a lot of people haven't cleared. People literally run like 4 supports here, you're going to see, with like 1 DPS. And this is where White Fang can be super, super strong, and it's going to be very good value. But, you know, besides that, you're not going to see it being that powerful. Next up, let's talk about the very controversial one, Revelation. So the way Revelation works is that you basically do % max health damage, and it's going to be true damage as well because it's real damage. And this will scale based off how many times you hit the mob or the boss, right? The total damage cannot exceed 180% of self-attack, yada yada yada. Basically, you bring this on max crit chance characters, and then you bring it against very tanky monsters, and you do a ton of damage. It's a big bonus if you hit multiple times, because skills that hit multiple times will make it proc more. For example, I have it on Messiah, and Messiah doesn't actually proc it a lot. He procs it twice on his S3. His S3 hits 2 times, but it's very, very good because since it's max % health damage, it's going to be super solid in Inferno. So if you're using any AoE damage dealer, doesn't necessarily have to hit too much, but like, you know, gets their S3 off a lot and multi-hits a lot, then it's going to be very solid on them. So Messiah is very good on it. You can use it on Giada. You pretty much need it on both these characters to make it work in Inferno. So it's just a very good shell on those characters. You can also run this on supports, and the reason why you can do that is because all you need to proc it is max crit chance, right? So for Freya, for example, you just run 2 crit chance accessories and just standard build after, and you put it on her because her S3 hits 4 times. So you kind of see where this is going. If you bring her into Inferno Doki Doki, she does like 40% of all of the monster's health in the first wave. and it just is super strong if you're trying to one-shot, right? If you're struggling on the first wave damage and you're running like Romoka, then try Freya on this setup. Another good option is Kazuya the Reverie, because she hits 3 times with her S3. Now the problem is this shell's cooldown doesn't line up with Freya's S3. So big thing about like Revelation and even the next shell Count, which we'll talk about, is you're gonna notice that this cooldown needs to line up with your S3, or you have to have an S3 that's like faster, or like Lily. And the reason why is because if this doesn't sync up with like your S3, you're just gonna be wasting it really like hard, right? For example, if I'm just using it on my S1 proc, I'm only doing 2 hits of the proc, right? Whereas if I'm using it on my S3 proc, right, my S3 like usage, when it like activates, if I'm hitting this on 5 targets, which is the second wave of Doki Doki, I'm getting 10 procs of the shell, which is 5 times as much value. So you want to make sure the shell's cooldown lines up. So you also want to see that your character's cooldown is lining up with your shell cooldown. And that brings me into, I guess, also before we like stop talking about Revelation, this shell is super broken in PvP as well. So like even if you get one fully invested, it's gonna be super good in PvP, because literally like every Freya and every, like, not every Kazuya, but most Freyas right now in high PvP are running this, and they're just like one-shotting your team. It's pretty crazy. I've seen like Kazuya and Freya run this and like 2-shot your team together. It's pretty insane. Next up we have Count. So Count is a very solid choice as well, because the effect is super powerful. It gives you a huge attack buff. This is insane. And also gives you lifesteal, which is like okay for PvE. But the reason why it's so good, especially on a character like Romoka, is because it's very good at boosting your damage for like a very hard hitting ability. So it's very good for Romoka because you're trying to one-shot like a monster with this, and the attack buff will actually give you more splash damage, right? You'll see that splash damage is unaffected by crit and stuff like that. Like it can't actually crit. So because of this, you're going to see that having extra attack will make the splash hit a lot harder. So because of this, it's very good on her. This shell is also pretty decent on Messiah, but the problem is that it's a 4-turn cooldown, right? Messiah has S3 on a 3-turn cooldown, so it's not going to line up with his S3 unless you hold it for 1 turn, which is not ideal. So because of that, you're going to have to run this on like 4-turn cooldown characters. Also, you can use this just in general, like if you really don't want to actually use like Revelation because you're not finding high health targets or multi-hitting, you can use Count just as a general purpose shell. Just be careful, because if this doesn't line up with your abilities, you're going to find that it's not the best option. Mostly because a lot of characters, like if you don't have it line up with your S3, a lot of characters right now, you're just maxing their S3, especially damage dealers, to save your lattice. So you really want it to line up with like your super hard hitting ability. If you have like a maxed Messiah, I guess it's okay because you have like a lot of maxed out stats and maxed out damage on stuff. And I guess like other characters as well. But this shell in general right now is mostly going to be used for Romoka, and also is going to be pretty solid for PvP, for like attack scaling bruisers, and for the most part is just kind of like a general purpose shell, right? Currently I think the 2 best shells right now are Revelation and also going to be White Fang for longer areas of content. But Count is okay for Romoka as well. Yeah, let me know in the comments down below what shells you guys are using. Just to recap very quickly, Revelation, good in Inferno, good in multi-hit characters, and also White Fang here is going to be good in single target fights only and in long content. If you're using like a lot of AoE damage, then Revelation is going to outshine White Fang by far. If you have a lot of single target damage and the fights are taking very long, White Fang is very good. Count currently is like a Romoka shell for Doki Doki. That's pretty much it. I'm sure there are other uses that I don't really know about, but like generally this is going to be mostly for Romoka. Thank you for watching, guys. Let me know in the comments down below what shells you guys are using and on what characters, and I'll see you guys in the next video.